Hello and welcome to the Dundas Dashboard tutorial series. In this video, Mobile Design Best Practices, I'm going to talk about some of the concerns inherent in designing dashboards for a smaller screen. Now this is a huge topic that could span hours and days, but I want to introduce a few of the high level concerns, and then I'll go through 6 tips that I'll share to help you start addressing these concerns. But again, this isn't the be all and end all of mobile design, this is just a starting point. So the 3 concerns that are most pressing on the mobile side of things when it comes to dashboards are, quite obviously, first, the screen size. That most phones and tablets these days have great resolution displays, but remember that resolution doesn't translate to physical size. So when you're designing, keep things large enough to read and to interact with. Speaking of interaction, users are going to be zooming, swiping, tapping, and long pressing, and that's it. The interaction model is quite different than on a desktop where we have the precision of a mouse. We have 2 buttons. In most cases, we have a lot that we can do with clicking and dragging. The interaction model is a little simpler and less precise, so design your dashboards with that in mind. And finally, the user profile. So web users themselves are notorious for not reading things, and mobile users are even worse due to their limited time, fragmented attention, and even where they're using their phones. So keep that in mind as you're designing as well. So here's 6 quick tips to help you start addressing these concerns. First and foremost, keep your buttons clickable. Keep your buttons and anything else that you want users to click on large enough to tap on with reliable precision. Apple is famous for their 44 pixel rule, which is any button has got to render at 44 by 44 or larger. So remember the difference between a pixel and physical resolution, so understand which device your users are going to be using and make sure that that pixel display comes out to 10 to 14 millimeters as a minimum on the device. Don't force your users to zoom in to tap on things reliably. So if you have a set of buttons together, make sure that as it renders on the device, the user doesn't have to zoom in to select between the buttons, because they're not going to do it. And remember, you have control over how the dashboard sizes on the screen. In Dundas Dashboard, there's a resize property that you can set, whether or not it will snap to the size of the screen or render off the sides or other options. Check our support site to make sure when a dashboard pops up on a mobile phone or a tablet that it's rendering and resizing the way that you want it to. Tip number 2, save your branding and adornment for your website or for your desktop dashboards, and even then I recommend using it sparsely, but especially on a phone or a tablet, be selective about the contextual items you provide. The focus really needs to be on the data, even more so than on a screen on a desktop where we have more screen to play with. So think about your titles, labels, frames, images, branding, anything that isn't data. Really consider if you need to present it. And my suggestion is to just use simple, short titles in unadorned text to complement your charts, graphs, gauges, tables, whatever you're presenting on the phone. Keep it very simple. This is Mobile Design 101. You'll see a lot of websites embrace this as well on their mobile options for browsing. Tip number 3, now I know dashboards themselves need to be presented on a single screen, but especially on the tablets, users do not want to scroll and they do not want to zoom where it's not necessary. So present everything in nice, easy, readable formats. Use high-level summarized metrics for your home screens, for your tiles, and then save the detail for drill throughs or for when they're at their desktops and have a little more leisure to browse through their dashboards. Save your additional data for drill downs. So on the desktop, we have hover over and pop-up interactions where you can have an additional graph or chart or even a table of detailed information pop up over a metric. I suggest avoiding this on the mobile phone. First of all, opening up a hover over is awkward on a phone. You have to have a long press. And second of all, it's going to occlude the underlying data, and this is even more of a concern on the mobile side where we have less screen to work with. So just in cases where you want to expose more detail, have the chart or graph or button clickable and have a new dashboard open up with the detail, again carrying through the context from the original screen so that the detail is usable. Number 5, understand how your mobile users work. Now, the paradox of the active user is even more prevalent on the mobile side of things, and that's that users just want to start using things. They don't want to read a manual, they don't want to read the instructions. And if they would just slow down and read the instructions, they'd actually be more productive. They'd get more out of it. They'd be using things in a shorter time frame than they would had they just jumped into things. But users don't embrace this, so save them from themselves. Don't have a ton of text, don't have a ton of convoluted interactions, don't have a ton of complex metrics. Use easy to read metrics, use easy to understand interactions, make things as simple as possible as a designer so that your users aren't going to miss things simply because they want to jump into things. And limit the amount of interactivity you provide, or anything that needs instructions. Just be very careful, because the odds are very good your users aren't going to discover it. And then understand where mobile users work. Most mobile users they're typically on the go or on the couch. They're less likely to do in-depth study because their attention is fragmented between their phone or tablet and everything else that's going on in their life. This is even worse than on a desktop in their office where they can sit and concentrate. So apply your best visualization, best practices to create simple, summarized decision support screens. Just they want to glance at that phone very, very quickly, pull out the information they need, and be on their way. And again, this sounds much like a dashboard itself, but on the small screen, it's more concentrated. It's something you really need to consider. This is why I strongly recommend creating mobile views, mobile specific views, as part of every project you create where you're going to have users using smartphones and tablets. So use the mobile home screen. That's what it's here for. You're using simple tiles, simple metrics, small real estate. Click on this to drill to detail. It's all set up to embrace a lot of those tips that I've just laid out as the beginning of this video. Here we're keeping them simple. Even this, a little bit of extra adornment on this is fine, but I wouldn't go much further than the background graphics that we have here. These tiles can be interactive. You can include buttons. You can include filters. They're full dashboards, but again, be selective. And each of these is going to drill to a full dashboard. So here's an example of a full dashboard. This is a desktop dashboard. It's designed for quick absorption of the detail, but there's a lot of information presented on screen, a lot that a user can do, a lot that a user has to focus on and read. I would consider for the mobile side doing something like this, a simple set of tiles. We've removed a lot of the context and the branding, kept things very simple. The pain point there at the transfer rate in the middle of the screen immediately jumps out because it's the only thing in red. Much more usable on the mobile side of things. And they don't have to look as simple as this. This is another example of some mobile tiles. You have a lot of options with colors and branding and interaction and everything else. So you can keep these coherent with your brand and your corporate image, while at the same time keeping them usable. So that is an introduction to mobile best practices. For more information on this or any of the other content in the Dundas training program, you can email us at training@dundas.com. For technical inquiries about the Dundas Dashboard platform, or to look up any of the technical terms I've used here, you can visit us at support.dundas.com. Thank you.